I woke up to a truckload of messages from you guys. David, are you gonna try Sonible's Smart Compressor too? Well, yeah, of course we're gonna try. Sonible makes great stuff. Let's go. Hello everyone, welcome back to MixBest TV. Hope you're having a great day. Before we start, please check the info box down below for my mixing courses on ProMix Academy. Free plugin special discounts and offers, and link to Smart Compressor 2, which is on sale. 30% off right now, link in the info box down below. But if you really want to learn how to mix and master professionally, click the join button down here, become a MixBest TV member, access the already big and always growing library of full mixing courses, start to finish, on so many different genres, mastering courses, and a lot more. And if the videos are helping you, please consider using the super thanks, helps the channel a lot. Let's go. In the past few years, Sonible made some of the most advanced and innovative plugins out there. We've seen on the channel Smart EQ and Smart Limit, and now just released SMARTCOMP 2, which they call Spectral Dynamic Compressor. And I can tell you this, I had this plugin before it was released. I had the time to play with it before doing the video, and I can tell you that that's not just a marketing line. This compressor is probably the closest to be every engineer's wet dream. So let's take a look at the basic controls and the GUI, which is resizable. First of all, at the top you have your time domain compression controls, and I love it because instead of the conventional knobs, which in this case are reserved for the spectral compressor part, we're going to see that in a minute, we have the slider, for example, for ratio here, and then threshold and attack and release. You just click and drag to change the parameters. It makes the GUI very streamlined and ergonomic. You can see the compression curve here at the top, this orange line, which is a very good representation of what's happening to the material. And then here on the left, we have the spectrogram, and you can monitor pre and post compression signal. At the top, we had the delta function, which allows you to only hear the compressed signal, so exactly what the compressor is doing. Fully variable left and right or mid-side channel link that goes to 0 to 100. And on the right, we have our output level, gain reduction level, and input level, which also has a function called input riding. We are gonna see that in a minute. At the bottom of the meter, we have a wet dry for parallel compression on board, and here we have the sidechain, extended sidechain with low pass filter, 2 belts, and a high pass filter. But the real innovation is the spectral compressor part. You see right now the spectral compressor part here at the bottom is grayed out, because to activate that you use the learning function, which is this green dot here at the top. They use this technology on Smart EQ and Smart Limit as well. When we press this button and we play the material, the compressor is gonna analyze our signal, whether it's a bass, a full mix, a vocal, whatever we are feeding into the compressor. And when it's done, you can see it activates the spectral compressor. The spectral compressor continuously analyzes the incoming audio across over 2,000 bands, becoming an ultra high resolution multi-band compressor that smooths out tonal imbalances, selectively applying compression only in those areas where it's actually needed. But with the additional controls, we can blend this new spectral multiband compressor with the classic and very predictable broadband compression. We have the spectral comp knob that goes from 0 to 150. When set to 0, SMARTCOMP 2 behaves just a regular wideband compression. And then you can blend in the spectral compressor up to making it fully spectral. We also have 2 knobs for color, the style, clean or dirty, and the color, which can be dark or bright. And then we have the frequency range for the spectral compressor. You can see 20K here and 20 Hertz. So we can limit the bandwidth in which the spectral compressor works. And then with the spectral link up here, you decide what happens to the signal that is outside this bandwidth. You can either compress it with a broadband compressor or completely leave it out and apply no compression. When you analyze the audio, you notice the compressor will automatically give you some suggested settings, okay? But it's starting universal. Here you have a bunch of presets and pre-made curves for bass, drum, guitars, keys, and several genres: mix, rock, pop, metal, hip hop, and so on. These are all the functions. Without further ado, let's see how it sounds. We're gonna start with this mix. It analyzed the mix very quick, and it gave us starting point settings. We see 1.6 ratio, attack, release, blah, 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 blah. Let's hear first how the spectral compressor works. So let's take it out of the equation completely. Okay, we hear with any sidechain engaged and no smart compressor, it really reacts to the low end, to the kick of this mix. But let's bring in the spectral compressor. Right now I'm not limiting the bandwidth. Nice. This is already a great example to understand how the spectral compressor works. First of all, you can see the greener areas here are the frequency regions in which the compressor sees and hears more energy and so applies more compression. And you can hear the massive difference in the mid-range in this case, because this is a smart compressor, but is not a human being. So right now he hears a lot of energy in the mid-range where the snare is. So pay attention to the snare with and without the spectral compressor. Okay, it's very clear. He hears a lot of energy in the mid-range where the snare is, and it applies more compression there. But of course, now it's up to you to decide how much of this spectral compression, this, we can say, frequency-specific compression to apply. Because, for example, in a mix like this, you do want the snare to be kind of out with the vocals, right? But if you have a mix that is unbalanced in that regard, then is where the spectral compressor comes to play. And immediately, as soon as I heard this, I thought mastering, because you don't have access to the mix. And if you have a track that is unbalanced, maybe low mids, maybe sibilants, we'll try this on a vocals for that purpose. That's real innovation that actually translates in the real world. Let's engage the low pass filter and maybe we can hear this difference even more. Let me up it to about 120 or 100. Nice, and it's also nice how clean it is. I mean, even just as a broadband compressor, when I apply a decent amount of compressor, you hear it doesn't really choke the top end, which is sometimes happens with digital compressors. This, I'm talking without the spectral compressor in the picture, is a really clean mastering grade compressor so far. Let's try the other controls. We have a style, clean and dirty, and a color. So I'm exaggerating kind of the settings right now, so I'm just gonna leave it, let's say 40%, 50%, 50. Spectral comp and play with the style. That is a surprise. I did not expect this control to make this much difference. This is, of course, obviously a kind of saturation. I actually like this more than the smart limit. Now, if it's the same, I'm gonna look like so bad right now, but it doesn't matter. I really like it. I wasn't expecting this. You hear how much the perceived loudness increases? Let's try the dark and bright. I'm gonna push the compressor a little more just to hear. It's very subtle, which I like. Wow, this is very interesting. So this color here, if you take a look at the green histogram here of the spectral compressor, this is actually related to the spectral compressor. And it's subtle, and I'm cranking all the way bright and all the way dark. But what it changes is not like a under the hood EQ. If you look at the spectrogram, you can see the top end changing. So it kind of relaxes the action of the spectral compressor either on the top end or the bottom end. And that's also why the action, it depends on how much compression you're doing. Because when we were doing like a little bit of compression, it was less obvious. Keep in mind, and we'll try another mix right now, that the AI behind the spectral compressor, it only sees the areas where there's more energy. That doesn't mean that you need to compress those areas more, like in this case. Let's try another mix. This is a rock mix, so let's analyze it.
Try to look around yourself. Everything just looks so bad. The world we're living seems to be so wild. What is good, we're gonna change. And what is bad, we're going to pray. But baby, trust me, what's over to follow. What's the meaning of the time you're wasting? You better save it.
That is also eye-opening. Again, the mix that we had before was pretty minimal, right? Few elements in the mix. This is a rock mix, there's a lot of stuff. So he sees a lot of energy in a lot of places. And again, this is great because at the end of the day, this is not a tool that does things for you. But now it's up to you to decide how much to use this. And it's also great that we can limit the bandwidth in which spectral compressor operates. So for example, I want to keep the top end, so I'm going to remove it from the spectral compressor, but I like how it cleans up kind of the low mid range. So I'm just going to make a very narrow selection from 500 to 110, and let's see how it sounds.
What is good, we're gonna change. And what is bad, we're going to pray. But baby, trust me, what's over to follow. What's the meaning of the time you're wasting? You better save it. What's the reason why you look so frightening? We're here to save it. So we don't know how to think more.
Man, this thing sounds great, and it's one of the few processor, actually compressors, that I would actually use the wet-dry. I'm not a fan of wet-dry compressor. Either I compress or don't compress, or I do a parallel aux. But with this complex processing happening, I feel like I can push the spectral comp more and then use the wet knob.
What is good, we're gonna change. And what is bad, we're going to pray. But baby, trust me, what's over to follow. What's the meaning of the time?
I really like it. I really like it. And again, this auto release, I'm not a fan of it, so I'm just gonna push it back and make it faster. But also the great thing, two things about the attack and release. You see there's a little ramp sign here. You can actually shape the release and the attack. You have a shape which is linear or more logarithmic. You have a hold to delay the release, and you also have a tempo sync, which is really cool. But guess what you can do with the spectral compressor? You can do spectral external sidechain ducking. So for this example, we're gonna use the classic kick and bass. But again, this opens up so many possibilities, and I'm thinking mastering and stem mastering. So I put SMARTCOMP on the bass. I'm just gonna analyze it here. All right, now these two elements don't really clash that much against each other, but just as an example, I'm gonna set my bus 1 for the key input, which is where I sent my kick drum, and then activate the external sidechain. Now look here, it turned blue, right? You can see here the SMARTCOMP knob and the threshold, and now you will see the kick drum triggering and the smart compressor working only on that frequency. This is so cool. Let me exaggerate the setting just so you can hear it. See, I see this and I immediately think, okay, electric guitars and vocals on a metal mix, or synth and vocals on a pop mix. Very, very cool. I still don't like this auto release, it's too slow for me. But since we are on the bass, we already analyzed it. Let's get rid of the external sidechain. You can see it turns green again. And let's compress this and let's see what the spectral comp does on a single track like bass. Well, this is definitely different than anything out there. There's no doubt about it. It's funny because we are very familiar with broadband compression when we go to 0, and then we can inject this completely new way of compressing material with spectral comp. And keep in mind, I'm exaggerating the settings, but on a track like this, where it happens often, right? You have some waltz note at the bottom, or you don't want to compress the bass too much because you lose intelligibility and you can't hear the articulation of what is playing because the top end and the mid-range, it gets compressed as well. Yes, we have multi-bands, but this is more advanced at this point. Let's see how it works on a vocal. My first thought is, let's try on a sibilant vocal, right? If we can use it to tame specific areas.
All I ever wanted was to stand my ground. Big words to confuse and spin your mind around.
And it gave us the default starting point settings. Also, you can see here this histogram here, and you also have this node here. I'm going to talk about that in a second because that's another really cool function. But anyway, this vocal is a little on the bright side, a little sibilant. So let's see, first of all, how it compresses the spectral compressor.
All I ever wanted was to stand my ground. Big words to confuse and spin your mind around. But every little step just takes me further down.
First of all, I really like how it makes the vocal more dense, and it's, again, by nature, if you don't touch the style and the color, very, very clean and transparent compressor, okay? So in this case, what I want to try to do is I want to try to limit this bandwidth here for the spectral compressor and just try to catch those S's, okay? And I'm not gonna compress the signal that is outside these brackets at all. So I'm just gonna try to use it as a de-esser, basically.
All I ever wanted was to stand my ground. Big words to confuse and spin your mind around.
And it works very well. Again, it's up to you now to decide how much of this to inject. What if I really compress it hard, and again, I'm using the wet knob?
All I ever wanted was to stand my ground. Big words to confuse and spin your mind around.
Now that is pretty impressive. This is a new way to deal with resonances, whether are S's or tubbiness or muddiness in a track. And you have so many options. You can blend the entire processing with a wet dry knob, or you can leave it at 100 and just blend the spectral compressor in. And again, right now I'm not compressing the signal outside of these brackets, but I'm just gonna go and compress it like almost all the way up.
All I ever wanted was to stand my ground. Big words to confuse and spin your mind around. But every little step just takes me further down. I found my soul just waiting in the lost and found.
And how transparent is this thing? It's crazy. Let's listen to the delta, what the compressor is actually doing.
All I ever wanted was to stand my ground. Big words to confuse and spin your mind around. But every little step just takes Further down, I found my soul just waiting in the lost and found.
You can fine-tune this thing more than anything out there. You hear I'm engaging the delta so I can hear only what the processor is compressing, right? So if I put it at 100 here, spectral link, the signal outside of the brackets is not compressed at all. I'm literally only hearing the spectral compressor compressing the S's. And then if I inject a little bit of spectral link, so 70%, now I start hearing what the broadband compressor and start compressing the vocal and how much.
All I ever wanted was to stand my ground. Big words to confuse and spin.
So you can really fine tune how much. It's crazy. I'm gonna go back analyzing a mix really quick because I want to show you this Histogram here and the function that it has.
Them are some big pretenders, so me take when me sell from them. Take when me sell from them. Ulterior agenda, so me.
All right, you can see here in this Histogram on the left that these lines are evenly separated, okay? But here you have a drop menu and you see standard, balanced mid, expand mid, squeeze mid, etc. If I pick one, expand mid, you can see now it gives you an intuitive overview of what frequency ranges are compressed or expanded, and you can move this around. If I select expanded mid, the way it works is the signal above the threshold is getting compressed, just like before regular compressor. The signal between the compressor and the second thumb are expanded, and the signal below the second threshold are being compressed again. And you can modify this any way you want.
Them are some big pretenders, so me take when me sell from them. Take when me sell from them. Ulterior agenda, so me take when me sell from them. Take when me sell from them. Bad vibes and me take when me sell from them. Take when me sell from them. And I go like we no member, but them devious.
Once again, a level of fine-tuning that is unprecedented. I think you can reach for this one anytime you have a problematic track that has imbalances in the frequency spectrum. You can grab this as a go-to for mastering, which paired with their smart limit is going to be a really good combination. And I think they did a great job. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And if you like this video, please don't forget to leave a like. The link to get SMARTCOMP 2 at a discount price is going to be in the info box down below. Click the join button, become a Mix TV member if you really want to learn how to mix and mastering. Use the super thanks and support the channel. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time.
Hands on my neck, hands grip my throat, lift me up.